Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today on the Best of Oklahoma Gardening, we're getting our warm season lawns ready for the year ahead. We go through the process to properly aerify and fertilize our lawns, control winter weeds, prepare our warm season lawns for spring, and we also look at the new Tahoma 31 Bermudagrass developed at Oklahoma State University and see how it compares to other improved Bermudagrass varieties.
Talking about aerifying our home lawns, and joining us is Dr. Justin Moss, Extension Turfgrass Specialist. And Dr. Moss, can you tell us what we need to know about aerifying our home lawns, please?
Sure. It's always fun to go out and poke holes in your lawn, right? And so that's basically what aerification is. You'll hear aerification or aeration, basically the same thing, but yeah, we're just going out in our lawns and we're poking some holes in there to open things up, to let water come through, to let gas exchange happen, to relieve compaction, and to remove thatch, which can be a detrimental layer that can build up right at the surface of your lawn. So we can do all that just through this easy process of aerification.
Because air is important in the soil profile, right? I mean,
That's right.
It's important for the root growth and for...
That's exactly right. You need oxygen down there. Those roots need oxygen. And so that's a good way to allow that to happen, opening things up. And so we can do that through a couple of different techniques, really, and we can use equipment to just poke a hole in the ground and not take any soil out. We call that solid tine aeration or aerification. And then we can also use some hollow tines that will actually go down into the ground and pull soil, remove cores out of the soil, and lay those on top of the yard. And so the nice thing about that is if you do have compaction or if you have thatch that's built up in the grass, you can pull that out and kind of open things up.
Okay.
And then in some cases even, let's say you wanted to maybe bring in some sand or...
To top dress it a little?
Yeah, or even some compost to top dress. If you pull those cores out, you can actually fill those back up if you wanted to. For home lawns, that's not a common practice. That's more so for maybe like golf courses and things like that. But I've seen it done in home lawns as well.
So is there a pro and con as to whether you use solid tines or use the hollow tines? Yeah,
for the solid tines are very good because you're just really poking a hole and moving on. And those holes will remain, but you're not removing soil out of the ground. And so there's, if you think about it, if you're going to remove all those soil cores and put them on top of the ground, there's going to be kind of a mess there, especially if it rains.
It kind of looks like you had a flock of geese come through.
Yeah,
right?
there's just little soil everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You're actually not moving a lot. You're actually only removing maybe 10% of your lawn when you pull those little cores.
Because it just goes down a couple inches?
Yeah, that's right. And so with the solid tines, it's very good for relieving compaction issues, opening up, let that water and air exchange occur. It's not necessarily as good for the thatch removal, and so if you wanted to get with that, you could look at the hollow tines where you pour the cores out, and so that's also good for relieving the compaction and for thatch reduction. But there's an extra step there in that cleanup step.
Right.
Now some folks just leave those cores right on top and not worry about them. Some companies or folks will kind of drag them and break them up and then just let them basically go back into the ground.
Right.
And then so you have to think about how much labor and how much do you want to put into this. This is a job that can be done by a homeowner if they go and rent equipment at an equipment rental facility, or maybe even easier than that, they could just hire a lawn professional to come out and do this for them. And so for a Bermudagrass lawn like we're in now, probably want to do that in the May through August time period,
okay,
when the grass is actively growing, because that way when you poke those holes, there's activity going so it can actually grow and recover and fill back in. And that's another nice thing about this, it can actually generate some new root growth for you.
Right.
And so if you do it when the grass is actively growing, that root growth can occur.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how often a homeowner needs to do this, and also just a situation when you might find that you need to do that. How do you know when you need to do this?
So this is something that can be done every 1 to 3 or 4 years, and you could do it less often if you just have kind of a lawn space that you're not really utilizing a lot as far as traffic or kids or pets. But like here's an area of a garden where you have a walkway and it comes to the grass, and so this area is going to get a lot of foot traffic, so more than likely this area right here is going to get a lot of soil compaction built up quite quickly. And so an area like this, you may want to aerate it every year.
Okay.
Maybe even if it's really bad, if you haven't done it in a long time, you may even want to do it twice the first year and then do it every year thereafter, just to help that. Of course, you want to aerate it, let it recover, fill back in before you aerate it again. But you see areas like this where people walk, and as it spreads out and the people can spread out, maybe the compaction is not as bad, so you don't have to aerate as much.
And is that what we're seeing right here too a little bit, is the compaction?
It's exactly right. And so when you get a lot of traffic, a lot of people coming through, or pets or what have you, the grass actually starts to die out, and that soil gets very rock hard. And so whenever you try to water it or put fertilizer on it or anything, it just kind of runs off because that surface is so compacted and hard that nothing can get in and nothing can get out.
Right.
And that's where that aerification can really help you. That's what it does well.
And you made a good mention of pets as well. I mean, a lot of times our dogs will run the perimeter of our property or something like that, and that really gets compacted.
That really compacts the soil, and those pets, they get in their habits, right, and they go the same place all the time. And so, yeah, if you have a lot of pets in the backyard, if you have a kennel, something like that, you're going to have to aerate to relieve that soil compaction for sure, or the grass is just going to die out. So there's no perfect grass, there's no perfect condition, and so we have to just do these basic practices, cultural and mechanical practices throughout the year to help it thrive and grow and have a nice healthy lawn. The other thing is when you're around trees, there may be some hardscapes you have to be careful about, but there's probably going to be roots. And so if you're going with a machine and hammering down in the ground and poking holes, you got to be careful about hitting those roots. For one, it could damage the tree roots, and for two, it could damage your equipment.
Right.
And so that you have to really be careful and think about. And even in this lawn here, you see some flags throughout the yard, and that's just the first thing we got to do is go identify the areas we can't poke holes in.
Right, our irrigation heads.
So this is irrigation heads, and if you poke the hole in the irrigation head, you're going to have a problem.
Yep.
And so we got to flag those out and work around them.
All right. Well, we've got our irrigation marks. Let's get to aerifying our grass.
All right. June is a good time to fertilize your turf grass in your lawn, and a lot of times we have Bermuda grass in Oklahoma, so I'm going to talk a little bit about fertilizing Bermuda grass in the summertime. So for our Bermuda grass lawns, we typically say you can fertilize during the growing season about 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per month. And that is generally true, but what we would like for you to do is take a soil sample from the lawn and get it analyzed at the OSU soil testing lab. You can do that through your Oklahoma County Extension office, get results back, and see exactly how much fertilizer you might need. Now, the lawn does require nitrogen through the season, but there's other nutrients, and so when we look at the fertilizer bag, it usually talks about 3. So we see 3 numbers on this is urea, so it's 4600. So this is telling us it has 46% nitrogen, but no phosphorus and no potassium. Another bag I have here is a typical one we see in the home improvement stores is a triple 13. You may see like a triple 10, a triple 20. So this has 13% each of the nitrogen, the phosphate, and the potash. And so another bag I have here actually is a 25010, so that one has the nitrogen and it has the potash or potassium, but no phosphate or phosphorus in it. So you can also look for fertilizers that are organic, such as this one here. It's a 315, and it does have phosphorus in it, but a very small amount. So these organic fertilizers often do have phosphorus, but you can find those without, and very same concept here. Just note that this has very small percentages of nutrients, which means you're going to have to add more product to the lawn to get the same amount of nutrients applied to the lawn. So just apply according to label directions, and if you want to go organic, it's easy to do. If you want to go inorganic with urea, that's easy to do as well. And so what's important to think about is, do I need these nutrients or not? So you take the soil test and really want to focus on the nitrogen, get that applied properly, but you may or may not be deficient on something like phosphorus. And phosphorus is important for the plant. It's usually readily available in the soil, and a lot of times we see soil test results come back from lawns in Oklahoma where there's plenty of phosphorus. So what happens is you send that soil test off, you get a report, it has a P, or phosphorus soil test index, and that'll range from 0 and above. And so if you're down close to 0, you're going to need to add some phosphorus to your lawn. But if you're above 65 in that soil test P index, you don't need to add any phosphorus. And we've seen levels at 300, 400, 600, even 1,000, which is well above 65. So those lawns may not need phosphorus fertilizer for several years. So we want to make sure we get the soil test. If it says I have a soil test P index of 100, I don't need to add any phosphorus. So I don't want to use like a 1313 or a 1010 or really anything with phosphorus in it. I want to either just go with maybe a urea, just add a little nitrogen, or go with something that's formulated or blended to not have any phosphorus, such as this bag of 25010 I have here. So if you do that, what it does is it makes sure the plant and the lawn is healthy, but it protects the environment, because phosphorus, if we lose it in the environment through like rainfall or sediment that gets into lakes and streams, it can cause some bad things, such as eutrophication in water bodies. And basically what that is maybe promotes algal growth. And so we don't want to do that. We want to protect our lawns, protect our environments, and do our best to only add phosphorus when needed. So I wanted to show a few winter weeds that will pop up this time of year. You'll see growing out in the lawn, in the landscape. This one here is called shepherd's purse. And it's this tall one you see sticking up here. If you look at the bottom of this plant, it grows up from a base, a rosette is what they call it. And this stem will grow up from that base. And you can see these white flowers, a white cluster of flowers at the tip of the plant. And what's really interesting about it is you'll see these seed pods. So this is an annual winter broadleaf. And so it will germinate in the fall, grow through the fall and the winter, and then really set that seed in the spring so that it can reproduce and live another year. So it's a winter annual. And you'll see these heart-shaped leaf pods growing on the stem of the plant up near that white cluster of flowers. You'll notice that these are pretty tall. And at this time of year, you're probably thinking about, well, what can I do to control some of these plants that come up like a winter annual, like shepherd's purse? And so we really want to go scout out a little bit earlier in the season and find these and get them when they're young. When they grow up this tall and they're already flowering and they're already setting the seed, it may be a little bit too late to get any type of control through like a herbicide or anything like that. So what you can do is try to mow that off before that seed is set, and maybe pick up those seed pods through bagging it or other means and just disposing of it. And that's a good way to get some control. But overall, if this is taking over your yard, this is probably going to resort to a herbicide application, maybe a pre-emergent in the fall, and then maybe a post-emergent broadleaf herbicide. Or even if the Bermudagrass lawn is dormant, you can use something that's non-selective like a glyphosate product if desired or if needed. They're also pretty to look at, and if you want to leave them there and let them set seed and come back the next year, you can do that as well. Most folks are probably going to want to look for control options though. Another winter annual broadleaf that we'll find at this time of year is henbit. And henbit is quite common throughout most of Oklahoma. You'll see it growing in a lot of yards in the January, February, March time frame. Especially start to notice it in that February to March time frame as these beautiful purple flowers start to poke out. Now this plant grows quite quickly through the winter time, especially with get some of these nice sunny warmer days in Oklahoma. It'll start to grow up and get quite thick and quite tall, and again becomes a little bit hard to control. If you look a little bit closer at it and maybe pick up one of the stems, what's neat about it is you notice you can actually count 4 sides to it. So it has this 4-sided stem, which helps us for ID. You'll see the leaves come out opposite, and then probably the best thing to look for is these purple or reddish flowers there at the end of the stem. So control is similar to other broadleaf winter annual weeds. So a product that's labeled for your Bermudagrass lawn, it's a broadleaf weed killer, is going to do quite well. Or if it's a dormant Bermudagrass lawn, you can use a non-selective herbicide such as glyphosate. What to be careful for is you want to hit these when they're small and they're young. Once they get very tall, like what we're looking at, this patch right here is more difficult to control. And this can take over almost an entire yard in Oklahoma in that February, March time frame. So again, maybe what you want to do is just keep it mowed down, come back the next fall, put down pre-emergent, and get whatever is left through that herbicide application in the January, February time frame when they're quite young. So here's one that's quite similar to henbit called purple dead nettle. In Oklahoma, we're probably going to see a lot of henbit out in the yard, but every once in a while we're going to run across purple dead nettle, which actually looks very similar. So sometimes the leaves of purple dead nettle will also kind of turn purplish or reddish. That's the name, purple dead nettle. If you look at the stems, they can both look like a square stem. They both have opposite leaves, but often purple dead nettle will have some small petioles on the leaves where henbit will not. The leaves of the purple dead nettle have small ridges to them, but the leaves of the henbit have deeper lobes to them typically. The older leaves of the purple dead nettle, if I put them side by side here, you'll see that they almost have a spade shape to them, where the henbit leaves again are more deeply lobed, have that look to them. Maybe almost more confused with a Carolina geranium leaf, which is another similar winter annual broadleaf. So all these broadleaf weeds look very similar. We want to ID them, know if we have purple dead nettle or henbit, how to deal with them. Once they get too large, they're hard to control, so we're trying to hit these when they're young and early winter. If we wait too far into the spring, they're going to get pretty mature and be hard to control. And at that time, maybe just mow them down and keep it mowed down till the next season. Spring is almost here, and it's time to start thinking about mowing our yard for the season. And even though the grass may still be dormant, we can go out and give an early mowing, or sometimes referred to as a scalping, early in the spring. And then what we can do is remove some of the brown, dead material in our lawn, get that off the lawn, allow the sunlight to penetrate in, and allow that grass, that lawn, to green up a little bit sooner for us. So this is pretty important if we have a warm season lawn. Now, if we have a cool season lawn, actually I wouldn't recommend this, only for the warm season lawn. So a lot of Bermudagrass lawns out there, zoysia grass, even some buffalo grass. It's okay to remove that brown material, allow the sunlight to penetrate in, allow it to green up. Now, when we talk about an early mowing or a scalping, we don't want to mow everything off so that we expose bare soil. If we expose bare soil, we're going to allow a place for weeds to come up and germinate and maybe cause us some trouble on down the line. So really what we want to do is just get that brown material off, mow it just like a normal mowing almost. The thing is, you may want to use a bagger and actually remove all that dead material rather than leaving it on the ground. That way it won't block the sunlight from penetrating in. Now this can be a big job if we're talking about removing all that dead leaf material. So you can do it yourself, bag it up, take it to a compost bin, mulch it somewhere. But also a lot of times it's sometimes worth it just for that first early mowing to hire a company to come out and do it. They've got large equipment, large baggers. They can knock it out really fast. If you'd like to do it yourself, I do recommend that you bag it up and compost it somewhere. Now, with the mowers and everything, what we want to do is just look at where we were mowing last season and then adjust it down maybe just a notch or a notch and a half and then go mow. And again, we don't want to put that thing all the way down to the ground. So that's what we have to be careful about. So you can adjust it, just go maybe 2 or 3 feet, see what it looks like. If you need to raise it, raise it. If you need to lower it, and go from there. And again, just make sure you get those clippings out of the way. Let the sunlight come in, you'll have a beautiful lawn, and it'll probably green up about 2 weeks earlier than normal.
We're going to talk about 2 exciting Bermudagrass products from the Specialty Crops Research Initiative Drought Resistance Trials. The program for development of improved drought resistance in Bermudagrass began in a multi-state project in 2011. And it was in the late teens of the 2000s that the first products actually got released. Those included Tahoma 31 and then also Tiftuff. The Tahoma 31 is a product of Oklahoma State University, and Tiftuff is a product of the University of Georgia. Actually, 5 universities worked collectively in the co-development of these lines. To my left is Tahoma 31. In the National Turf Evaluation Program trials, it appears as OKC 1131, but the registered trademark name of Tahoma 31 Bermudagrass has been applied for. It's very dense, medium to dark green, can tolerate cutting heights between 1/8 of an inch up to about 1.5 inches, maybe even up to 2.5 inches. And it's got excellent winter tolerance, early spring green up, and then also is very water use efficient. If you have to get a lot of growth out of a grass while you're still putting a lot of traffic on it, you're going to have to water it. And it uses that water very, very efficiently. Next, I'd like to show you Tiftuff. I think it's a catchy name. It's from the University of Georgia, and it comes from a long line of superior products produced by that breeding program. And Tiff merely means that it was created and developed from the Tifton, Georgia area. Tiff does not mean fine textured, by the way, folks, because there are many great forage Bermuda grasses that start out with the name Tiff as well, and they are very, very coarse textured and great forages, but they're not turf types. Traditionally, Tiffway was used in Oklahoma up to about I-40, and it lacked winter hardiness for the northern part of the state. But Tiftuff has good winter hardiness, and this is actually one of the most drought-resistant Bermuda grasses in the marketplace now. So you've got a choice of Tahoma 31 or Tiftuff as 2 of the most drought-resistant Bermudas at this time. This one's not quite as dense and not quite as fine a textured as Tahoma 31, but it's still a great fit to the residential market. Actually probably tolerates a little higher mowing than Tahoma 31 while not getting puffy under those conditions. Now both the Tahoma 31 and the Tiftuff are interspecific hybrids, and they are sterile. While they will flower occasionally, they will not produce seed. So you won't be able to go out and ask to buy Bermudagrass seed of either Tiftuff or Tahoma 31 because it doesn't exist. They have to be planted by either sprigs, plugs, or sod in order to establish them. They require no special care in terms of their establishment or maintenance. So you can use the Bermudagrass management calendar information that's found in HLA fact sheet 6420, Lawn Management in Oklahoma, when you go to manage either one of these Bermuda grasses. We hope you'll give them a try because we think they have excellent adaptation to our state.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week, we'll be busying ourselves inside to get us jump on spring outside. If you've ever wanted to get into successful seed starting, you won't want to miss this episode, as host Casey Hinches takes us through everything from selecting a seed starting kit, when to start seeds, up potting, and when and how to transplant your babies into the garden. We hope you join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.